Hey, my name's Adam Lauman, and I want to present on my field in-depth research work that I have the opportunity to do. I actually work at Morning Star Church, so it wasn't too hard to find somewhere that I could plug in and be involved in Christian leadership for an extended period of time. I work at Morning Star Church. It's a United Methodist church in the greater St. Louis area, and my job is actually the director of discipleship. This is a newer position for me. I transitioned to it over the course of last summer and fall, and really started hitting it full time into this last winter and spring. So it's brought a lot of new challenges. I actually, prior to this, was the director of student ministries for the last 5 years. So I've been working with students. Our church, it worships about 2,000 on a weekend, so it's a larger church, and sometimes when you do have a larger environment like that, change doesn't go as quickly. But it has been really exciting to apply a lot of the things I've been learning in Christian leadership directly back into the setting I'm in, and to see how it plays out on not just a large scale, but when you scale it down even to smaller environments, things like life groups and any other small group, affinity group. I'm over things like MOPS and Boy Scouts and all sorts of things along those lines, and get an opportunity to do some other things. There's a few projects I've really been involved in the last couple weeks as we've worked through this module, and I've had to look at, okay, well, how does this stuff I'm in the middle of right now, how does Christian leadership really apply on an outward basis? So there's three big things I wanted to talk through over the course of this video. The first one is the implementation of a new discipleship tool. It's a personal assessment tool to help people lead in their own lives. But part of what we have to do is to make sure that people have an idea of what that is, why it's useful to them. So we're implementing that. I'll talk a little about that. That's where a lot of my focus will be, because that's where my focus has honestly been over the last, not just 2 weeks, but even before this, but the last 2 weeks is really when we've had to get going on this and roll it out to other people. The second thing that I want to talk about within this is a sermon writing team that I sit on. So I actually sit with our lead pastor and several of our other teaching pastors, and get to feed in to what it means for us to put together a sermon. What sort of things we're preaching about. We already have a big calendar. We know, okay, well, here's the large themes and how they work out through the year. But for each individual sermon and series, we're diving in, plotting out those sermons, and looking at how God's Word intersects with it, how we're communicating vision to the larger church. So I want to talk about the leadership aspects that I've seen within that. And finally, the third place is a transition that we're making in our life groups, or small groups, whatever you want to call them. We call them life groups here. But a transition we're making from a free-for-all, where life groups kind of can do whatever they want, maybe we'll support them, but really at the end of the day it's their choice what they do, to a long-term transition to a single sermon study model, where everyone at the church gets to focus in on the same thing and hopefully go the same direction. So I wanted to talk about a little bit about the leadership there. And also we'll focus in on one of the biggest lessons I have learned within all the modules so far, and some of their applications within my job and my role here, as I've been fully immersed and fully immersed every week, working in 45, 50 hours doing what I'm doing. So the first big place where I have just been spending tons of time is an implementation of a real discipleship survey tool. It's a quiz. We call it our Next Steps quiz. It's a new thing we've just rolled out. We started looking at it a few months ago and actually got this rolling very, very quickly, a lot faster than we would normally move anything that we would do here. But we saw huge value in this, and the ability for people to self-assess and answer questions on a very short quiz. It's a 5-minute quiz that people can take, and if you're actually interested in taking it or looking at it, you can go to mynextsteps.faith. It's mynextsteps.faith. This is a tool that we've rolled out, and I've been really a major part of the leadership and development of how this all ends up looking. We partnered with Real Discipleship Survey. They're the company that has put together the format we use, because it's a web-based tool, and they're the ones that are using this. But within all of this, we have had to look and say, okay, well, how do we, as church leaders, as Christian leaders, how do we help people catch the vision of wanting to grow for themselves? So we have been looking at that for a long time. One of our church's mission statements, our vision statement, is to meet people right where they are and help them take the next step on their spiritual journey. So we have to get in the trenches with people and help them figure out what that is. So this is a big Christian leadership piece, right? I mean, it really has to do with personal discipleship, of helping people grow from not just being satisfied where they are, not just being satisfied showing up on Sunday or maybe doing a couple little things, but look at their life on the Christian spectrum and say, okay, where's all the places that I have space to grow? And from there, one of our big jobs is to help vision cast for them and say, okay, well, hey, here's where you are, here's some places that you can grow. So we've had the opportunity to develop and figure out what those steps are. It's been a good exercise for us as leaders on my team to say, okay, well, what are those things? What are we offering to people as they continue to grow as Christians? And to make sure that we have the pieces in place that make it possible to grow. Make sure those are easy, accessible to get to. So that's one of the biggest things I think that has helped us there. It's also helped us realize that leadership as a means of grace. We're all in different places. Even within our leadership team, everyone's kind of in a different spot. But we're realizing that everyone does have a spot, a place where they can grow, in more than one place for most of us, right? So it's been really great for us to offer some authenticity to the fact that as leaders, we can actually take this survey ourselves and realize, hey, here's the spot where I need to grow, where I have some space for improvement, some space to get closer to God. Is really a means of is a piece of sanctification, is what leadership looks like, because we're always growing as leaders. We're always growing in our ability to meet people where they are successfully and help them to grow. That's probably one of the biggest things, one of the biggest applications I've seen, is to understand that grace is needed as we cast vision for leaders. So the other part is that we need to be willing to share that we don't have it figured out. It's a level of humility that we're still growing, that we're still trying to continue to grow closer to God in our search for Him. And that leadership is a real part of that. But there's also an element of humility that we bring to the table when we're admitting that we don't have it all figured out, that we're not there yet. And that's something we've had to be honest about as we market this, that, hey, for us, this is practical. For you, this is also practical. It's also something that we're able to show and help show to other people and offer opportunities to grow together. So it's not just something I'm telling you have to do. It's not I want to take this log out of your eye. It really is a matter of we're all in this journey together. And the other great thing about this is we're launching this not under funds that we have as a church right now, but under a grant from our local district of the UMC Church for the ability to help implement this into other churches in the area. So not only are we leading within our own church, but we have the opportunity within this to help other churches grow and to cast vision for them. So we've been piloting with a much smaller church, a smaller congregation, and figure out what the practicality is for them in their setting, and helping them to realize ways that can work out. And after this, we're going to be helping to launch this through workshops and vision casting for them of what it means for all the other churches in our area to be able to try out this tool and use it and help their congregations grow their discipleship, grow people recognizing what their next steps are. So that's been a huge opportunity. It's been great figuring out how it works, rolling it out. And it's also, as we've rolled it out, we're already getting feedback back in that we're able to take as we prepare to launch it out to our district, and potentially even out to our conference. Feedback that we're going to be able to utilize and change things, and not just drive ship on our own, but take in constructive feedback so that we can change it and make sure that our vision is matching with the vision that other people see as worthwhile and meaningful. So that's been priority number one. The second big thing was the sermon writing team that I have the opportunity to sit on. And really, the name of the game there has been humility. As I started to read through Humilitas, as I prepared for this class, so much of that just rang true to me as I continue to learn and grow and develop as a leader myself. I have an opportunity to sit in with a lot of other people who have preached a lot more sermons than me, have a lot more hours in being church leaders. So it's been a great opportunity for me just to sit back and listen, but it's also been great with knowing that they're listening to me, that they want to hear back from me and have my input. This last week in particular, I actually helped 2 other pastors write sermons and offer my feedback and suggestions. But they both have just mounds of sermons, higher than anything I've preached. I've had the opportunity to speak to a lot of people, a lot of young people, but when I sit down with someone who says, "Oh yeah, I am coming in as a guest speaker, but I've given 700 sermons and actually worked 15 years in ministry," it's a chance for me to sit back and grow and listen and pay attention and not think that I have everything figured out. I think that's a huge part of leadership that I personally need a reminder of a lot, that I don't have it figured out, but I have other people that I need to listen to and learn from and grow with. I've learned to present ideas and to move forward without having to take charge. As I sit in a room where I'm probably the least tenured person there, I've learned better at least, how to present an idea in a way that conveys what I need to say and hopefully moves a conversation or a particular sermon in a direction without having to hijack a meeting. It's been good practice for me as I sit back in that situation, in those meetings, and watch what that looks like. Because it's not just me, I'm actually learning from some people that are incredible leaders and incredibly humble and try not to step on each other's toes, but are willing to say their piece and then sit back behind our lead pastor, if he's in that meeting, and let him ultimately make that decision. So for me, watching someone else who's in that mode of taking in a lot of information and moving it into one direction that everyone can follow behind and get behind has been a huge experience for me to be able to be a part of. Something in the lesson material that I did notice was when I was reading through Wesley's sermon number 104. In point 27, he said, "The grand reason why, which many give from separating from the church, is namely that ministers are unholy men." As I was reading through this, the entire sermon did stick with me, that part in particular. Remembering that we are fallible and that people notice that. So as we are crafting our sermons, as we're crafting anything that we're preaching, making sure that we are honest and authentic and humble in recognizing that we don't have it figured out. And I think as leaders, we continue to grow, and we continue to grow stronger congregations as we continue to be honest. People can identify better with it. They can get behind someone who they know has made mistakes, but is willing to be honest and willing to learn from any mistakes they've made. I think that was the big point that I took away from reading Wesley's sermon, is that we do have to be real, and that, again, leadership is a part of the means of grace. It's part of sanctification. That as we grow as leaders, we need to not ever feel like we have it all figured out until, because there's only one person, right, that has it all figured out. That's God. So yeah, I think that's been a huge place where I've grown and learned. Finally, the third big place I wanted to talk about was this transition piece that we've been making from a hodgepodge of whatever anyone wants to study about as a group to the goal of having a single sermon-based study that any life group that is existing within our congregation is able to do, hoping to give a sense of uniformity, hoping to give a little bit more simplicity in hoping to find ways that people can integrate into a group without having to cross an enormous cultural barrier. It's really a goal of unifying culture throughout the congregation, and in that is partially being able to cast a strong enough vision that people feel the need to get behind and contribute to in a constructive way. This place in particular, I've seen a lot of, at least I've had a lot of personal self-reflection as we've looked at the idea of casting vision, as I listened to Andy Stanley or watched through the deep dive, what it means to cast a vision that people care enough about to take an active part in making it happen. So I've tried to begin constructing a conversation, more than an argument, that listens to people and helps for them to see what it would look like for a church that has a unified culture, a unified life group culture, and a place that anyone can walk in and feel welcome and feel like they know what they're getting themselves into. So, did want to mention how helpful that this last module has been. Also really tried to use Jesus' model, walking with people and listening to them, and helping them to think self-critically about what it would mean to move from where I am to where that preferred future, preferred outcome is. I think that's a huge piece of discipleship, is sitting down with people, making sure you're leaving space for them in your work, that you're not getting so over your head and everything else that's going on that you can't pull yourself out of the fray to listen to someone else and sit down with them and enjoy a cup of coffee. So yeah, I've been listening to those people and just having a good chance to hear back from them, share some of my ideas, some of my vision, and let them really land in that place that I'm hoping that they'll land. And over the last couple meetings, as I'm trying to sit down with all of our life group leaders, it's early in the process, but the couple meetings I've had have been really successful, and people are seeing that vision, they're getting behind it, and they're really excited about it. So those are the big three things. I know I probably talked the most about leadership as a means of grace, but that's been the piece of this class that has stuck with me so much so far. As leaders, we progress, and as we progress, we need to realize that we're all in different places, and leadership isn't limited to a single person. It's what we do as a group together. And there might be people that are further along that journey that have more of a voice to contribute back. But when we see leadership across the spectrum, I think we realize a lot more people can contribute, and it makes for a stronger organization and a stronger church. So I've been excited to be a part of this class, excited about all of the practical information that I've been able to gather and learn from this class. And even over the last couple weeks of this module, it's been incredible to see some of these things play out in the real world and find immediate application. So that is the analysis of my integrative study that I've been doing, and I appreciate your time, and thank you for listening, and see you online. Bye.